Do things look overwhelming sometimes and are? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my overwhelm. My name is Linda G. Robert. I'm your Back in the Groove Again coach, helping you live your best life right now so you can love what you do. So if you've been following along, you know that I've been going through a bit of a challenge lately. My father passed away a few weeks ago. I went on vacation the next day, and I'm back having to deal with a lot of different things. And I want to talk a little bit about what I kind of went through when my father was not feeling well. He was at the hospital, and my vacation had been booked for weeks, actually months. And there was a time during that period when my dad was in the hospital that I wasn't sure whether I should go on that vacation or not. And I was actually prepared to not go should he be still unwell or alive during that time. And I say that because towards the end, he was progressively getting worse, and there was a period where I wasn't sure if he'd still be alive by the time my vacation came up. So I prayed on it, and that next day, July 9th, my father passed, and I was with him. And, you know, it was very, very emotional. I was alone with him, and I was extremely emotional. And so after that, I decided I'm going to go on my vacation. And this was how I interpreted it, as being my dad's message to me, that go on your vacation. I've passed just on time to let you go on your vacation. So I decided to go on my vacation. Now, I had a great time with my friend, and there were periods where I was really tired because this whole process was very, very tiring, very, very exhausting. Being at the hospital, not 24 hours 7, no, but going fairly often and not really knowing what was going on. I was really tired when I was on my vacation. I had a great time, but there were periods of that 10 days that I was emotional, that I was very tired. I didn't want to do a lot. But I didn't regret going. I did not regret going. I knew that there were things that I needed to take care of when I arrived back home. Now, I had already taken care of certain things. For example, the following day after he passed, that was the Sunday that I did leave, I decided to go to the funeral home and make those arrangements. My dad wanted something very simple. So I did that before I left. So I knew that when I came back, I had a lot of things to deal with. Things like, continuing to clean the apartment, to cancel all the things that need to be canceled, the phone bill, giving the notice to for his apartment, finding out in terms of the finances, because I knew that I was going to be the executor. So a lot of little details needed to be done, and still need to be done as we speak. And so for a while, when I came back, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do first. I didn't know what to do first. And I felt overwhelmed, and I felt tired as well. Thinking about a lot of different things, not just related to my dad's passing, but also because I'm the executor of his will and of his estate. A lot of different things I was thinking about, and still am, although I've sorted a lot of that stuff out. So I needed to remind myself quite often that I can only do one thing at a time, and I can only take it one step at a time. Now, there are certain things that were more important than other things. and I can't give you any example. The point is that you have to at some point prioritize what needs to be done now, what can wait till later. I knew, for example, that I had till the end of August to move my dad's stuff out. Now we started. I went there for one day with my son. I went there alone by myself yesterday just to remove a few things. But I'm keeping in mind that I have till the end of August. So that's something that, helps me, because there's a deadline. Some of the other things might be more urgent, like canceling Bell, for example, that needed to be done, like canceling his content insurance. Those things I did do, and that it was a little bit more important than moving all this stuff out of his apartment. So I'm not done. There's a lot of things done, but I'm reminding myself again that I need to take it one day at a time. And that way I don't necessarily get overwhelmed, because I'm still coaching, I'm still teaching, I still have my life. And this is where it gets a little bit overwhelming, right? When somebody passes, like in my case, my father passed, my life continued. I did go on vacation, and when I came back from my vacation, I needed to continue to work. Now I do that online, which is, a lot better in the sense for me. But I didn't take time off to deal with this. I took time off for a vacation. And there were things that I needed to do for me. So while I'm managing my dad's affairs, I still needed to balance that out with things that I needed to do for myself, such as working, such as going to the physiotherapist because I have a sore arm, just those little things, taking care of a car because my muffler wasn't sounding good. So, those kind of things that life goes on, right? Life goes on. I needed to be able to, and I still need to do that, to be able to manage and to prioritize what's important. Because if I think I can do everything all at once, and I am by myself, there's no one really helping me except for the apartment my son is helping me, it can absolutely be overwhelming. So give yourself permission if you're having to deal with these similar things as an executor, for example. Give yourself permission to stop, to breathe, to write yourself notes of things that need to be done, to determine your priorities, because obviously there are some things that do need to be done fairly quickly, and some things that don't need to be done right away, right? And it's really hard to tell what's a priority or not. I'll give you another example. I've picked up my dad's ashes. I have his ashes in my room. But I also called the cemetery because I wanted his cremains to be buried with my grandmother, and I didn't know if that was possible. So I made calls and I received some answers to some of the calls that I placed. So I have information now. And of course, I don't need to act on all of that information right away. But I thought it was important for me to at least have phone numbers, because I'll need phone numbers to figure out who I'm going to call, to have the information accessible. So I've written everything down on a document that is on Google Documents, so that when it's time, for example, with my dad's remains, when it's time to plan that, I have the information and I'm ready to just organize that. I've met with the bank, so there's a lot of different things to do while my life continues and while I continue working. Suffice to say that for those that do know a little bit about me, I'm doing a lot better. It's still a lot of stuff. I still need to sort through things, at my dad's place. But like I said, I'm giving myself the time to do that until the end of August. Now, at the same time, I'm thinking here that I started writing a book. I started writing a book a few months ago. And I was very, very serious about writing that book, but life got in the way, right? Things happened. Now, I am going to write that book, but I had to reprioritize things. I had to shift things around. So that is a possibility for you as well. It's quite possible that you have a goal in mind. You want to do something for yourself, like I want to finish that book, but something else happens that's more important, like the passing of someone, or you need to determine your priorities. And keep in mind your vision, keep in mind your goal. In my case, I have written since then in my book, but not as often as I wanted to. So instead of feeling guilty about it, I'm giving myself a break, of course. I'm telling myself, you will continue writing, you will eventually publish that book, but there's other things happening that are taking precedent right now, that are more urgent. So I want you to keep these things in mind, because while you might have some goals and you might be adamant about meeting those goals, meeting those targets, things happen. So don't lose sight of your goals. You might have to reprioritize what needs to be done, but always keep in mind your goal. Because like in my case, my book doesn't have to be done like right away. Nobody is pressuring me to complete this book. This book is for my friends, for my family. And hey, if you're interested in receiving a copy of my book, by the way, it's a book that's written for women, or basically anyone who has lost themselves in a relationship, lost themselves in a job, just lost themselves and stopped taking care of themselves. So it's a book about that. I'm going to be introducing my self-care model in that book as well. So I'm going to get that done. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, maybe not in the year from now, who knows, but I will get it done. And so goals sometimes are sometimes dreams as well. And if we do keep them in mind and do a little bit every day or as often as we can, we will inch our way eventually to finalizing that goal and feel quite successful about it, especially when it's something important. This is something that's important to me. And so I know that one day I will finish that. These are all things that life does take over. And if you want to live your best life now so that you can love what you do, you might need to reprioritize. You might need to take a breath and say, okay, slow down. What really needs to be done today? What can I put off until tomorrow? We're not talking about procrastination here. We're talking about reprioritizing, shifting some of the priorities, especially when something unexpected happens, like in my case, the death of my father. So a lot of different lessons here have been learned. One of the lessons that I've learned recently is, and this is related to, it's more a technical thing. I'll give you an example. My father had two different bank accounts. One of them, I was on his account, so like a joint account, and I was also a beneficiary of one of his investments. But on the other account, I wasn't. So I didn't have a lot of information on it, and I wasn't a co-signer. So what I decided to do, because my father was ill at the hospital and I needed to get powers of attorney done again, because those that had been done several years ago weren't good anymore. So, my dad and I got together while he was at the hospital, and I asked him some pointed questions, and I got him to sign power of attorneys and a makeshift will, a hologram will, I think they call it. One of the banks, the bank that had me as um, the beneficiary and on my dad's account, accepted that written will, but the other bank didn't. The other bank didn't. And of course, I didn't have time to go to a lawyer to make sure this was all, legal and everything. So I had to, of course, make an appointment to the lawyers, which is going to be next week. So, lesson learned, guys. And we talk about this, right? We've talked, not you and I, but we've talked about how important the power of attorneys are, how important the wills are, especially when there's some type of property or, money involved in an estate. It's so important to have a will done. So update your will. One of the things that I was concerned about is, and still am a little bit here, is who's the beneficiary of some of the things for my dad. He was divorced many, many years ago, but I don't know if this person is a beneficiary of one of his things. So if you've been divorced, make sure you update your will. Make sure that you update your beneficiaries, especially if your ex-spouse, for example, is on that and you don't want them to inherit or to get those that money, for example. So that's really, really, really important. So get on that. Get on that. These are things that, oh man, it just takes time. It takes time, and it takes a bit of focus in some cases. So that's something that I learned. And I think what I'll do at one point is I'll add my son to my account. Now, I trust him. Of course, you just wouldn't choose just somebody to add to your account. My father trusted me. And to be honest, the only time I went to that account was when he was alive. And under his, permission to receive, to take money out so he can pay some bills when he couldn't attend. It was easy for me because I was on the account. I remember going to that bank with my dad to make me one of these, a co-signer his account. So he knew, of course he was already in his late 80s by then. So these are things that I'm considering as well right now, is making one of my sons putting him on my account, because I think it's going to be easier for him. The will is done, but I'll have to update that will, at some point during my life, because I probably have another 30, 25, whatever, many, many years to go. And then again, who knows? So review your wills, review your power of attorneys, because that's really, really important. Other things too, like, my dad had a do not resuscitate order. And he also was asked, this was the day before he passed. The doctor gave him two options, basically, because he wasn't improving and wasn't going to improve. And I was so happy to be there when the doctor spoke to my dad. He said, you're not going to get better, and we only have a couple of options here to help you. My dad knew that. So the doctor gave him his two options. One of them was to go through palliative type of medication to ease his pain and to make him more comfortable. And the other one was to go through a MAID. I think it's medically assisted. Oh God, I can't remember what it stands for right now. Medically assisted ID for the death, something for death. Sorry, I can't remember what it stands for. That would have taken 10 days. Now, my dad was competent. He was able to make his own decision. And he decided that he wanted to go through the palliative medication. And so there were two different types of medication, one to ease the pain, because he was suffering from pneumonia and having such a difficult time breathing, and he had a very sore because he had some type of nerve problem in his mouth or in that area. A lot of pain, and he really wanted to stop suffering. So he opted for that. he would have had to wait 10 days to get the documentation for the maids done. So my dad said, no, let's do this. And the doctor really explained to my dad and explained to me that once this medication was going to be in his system, he would eventually like fall asleep, almost like being in a coma. And that's what in fact happened the next day, because they started the medication the day before he passed, and then the next day he was pretty well asleep most of the time. So, you know, these are things that I didn't know. The doctor was very kind and realistic with my dad, and I was really happy to be there. Now that helped me really to understand a bit more of the process of what happens when somebody is competent and when somebody is dying or won't get any better. It helped me a lot to understand that. So that's something that I'm learning, that I've learned, and I'm sharing that with you. You might not know that unless you go through that experience, right? And he also had a do not resuscitate order as well, and I knew that about my dad, which speaks to the relationship that we had, I should say. Now I'm going to end on this. I've talked about relationships in the past and other videos, and you may or may not have a relationship with your parent, with your good relationship with your spouse or with your kids. You know, that happens. Unfortunately, it does happen that family members, you know, they stop having communication. But if you do have a good relationship, or if you think you can build on what you currently have and make it a little bit better, then I suggest at some point having a conversation with your elderly parent so that you can, especially if you're the executor or the only child. I mean, in my case, I knew I would be responsible. Now, I wasn't the only child, but I didn't know that I was going to be the one responsible for this. So I knew that I needed to have a conversation with my dad. And we did have conversations along the way in the last few years, but this one, because there were information that I didn't have, I needed to ask. So, you know, this is one of those things that can be sensitive in some cases. And if you want help having these types of conversations with anyone, that's what I'm here for as well, right? I am here to help you live your best life now so you can love what you do. And that means perhaps improving your communication with a loved one. So you could go to my website for more information. My name is Linda G. Robert. I am your Back in the Groove Again coach, and I am here to help you live your best life now and to share life's lessons with you, with real things that are going on in my life. Go to my website at lindagrobert.com and stay tuned for more videos. Now, I can't promise they're going to be that quick, but you will get more videos and updates as well. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye, everybody.